Ask the Dean, episode 87. The Mapped team is here to answer your questions. Whether you're a pre-med student, pre-PA student, yeah, we can talk about that too, or anything in between. I'm with the Map team, starting with Verinia on the top there. Verinia Granum,
Hello.
former assistant dean of Prehealth and STEM advising at Hofstra University. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful, thank you. The sun is shining. It's about 40 degrees in New York.
Nice.
So it's pretty much balmy today.
Very nice. What is your key kind of pre-med philosophy? Quick little one-liner pre-med philosophy.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't know if I have a one-word philosophy. As an advisor, my goal is to help you through this process. We may reflect and find out maybe it's not the right time for you to apply. It's never no. It's a matter of maybe not now.
Nice.
So we'll figure it out.
Never know, maybe not now. That's your philosophy. I love it.
There, I figured it out.
Dr. Scott Wright, former director of admissions at UT Southwestern, retired executive director at TMD SAS. Not to be called Tim Sauce. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing very well. In comparison to Verenia's weather report, it is sunny and 70 degrees here in Austin, Texas. And I'm doing, yeah, right. And I'm doing really well. So thank you, Ryan.
Yeah. We were bragging about our sunny and 70-degree weather in December until we weren't when wildfires took over our town because it was 70 and sunny. So
and no rain.
Yeah, there are issues there.
Yep, absolutely.
And Rachel Grubbs, co-founder at Mapped, MCAT test prep expert wizard. How are you doing?
I'm great. I have no idea what the weather is. I haven't even looked out a window today.
That is the right answer. Yeah. When you work from home, who cares about the weather?
Locked up in my studio office.
There you go. Rachel and I are both rocking our work hard, be creative, do good shirts.
I've got one too.
Yes. Oh yeah, you do. I didn't.
The shorter people, the words don't always show up on camera.
Well, I'm standing, so that's why.
Yeah. I love the rainbow.
Yes. Awesome. Rachel, the artsy med got into med school.
Yay! No surprise there.
Yes.
Congrats.
That is awesome,
That's
Rachel.
awesome.
You're so that is so awesome. I'm so
Rachel,
excited.
is that for the interview that you had last week?
Yeah, I bet it is.
Let us know.
Yeah, I think that was our only interview, so it has to be.
That's so awesome, Rachel. I'm so excited for you.
Yay.
Scott, you did a mock interview with Rachel.
Yep.
Tell us why she got into medical school. How awesome was she in her interviews?
Oh, great. She did a great job in her interview, mock interview with me. And I'm sure that was, she's just got a great story. And Rachel, you're just, you're going to be a great doctor. So I'm super excited for you.
That's awesome. You know what that means? We got to refund her Application Academy membership, which is, I love to do it.
We said that's our favorite reason to refund.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations, Rachel. We are thrilled for you.
Oh, man. I'm so excited. And she's here in Austin. I need to take her out for a beer or something.
Nice. Awesome sauce. Congrats.
Cool. What a wonderful kickoff to the session.
Yeah.
Yep,
See,
absolutely.
That's what happens.
It's never no. It's maybe not yet or not now. But
all right, Rachel, we'll get you on the pre-med year. So I'll chat with you.
Yeah, that is so cool.
All right, let's rock and roll. Some questions. If you're watching on Instagram, go over to mapped.tv, mappd.tv, and we'll answer your questions there. James asks, should each shadowing opportunity be separated in the activity section for AMCAS, which is the WMC, or should they all be in one, each physician shadowed multiple times, or just separate online versus in person? Verinia, the dreaded shadowing, how many spots should it take up? How do I format this question?
Yeah, I don't think this should be separated. Shadowing, you want to save space for your activities that you were more engaged in and you were more active in. Shadowing, we talk about this all the time. It's a very passive activity, and of course, not to discount it. It's still an experience. I would, if you are struggling to fit everything in, I would group those together as much as possible. You also don't want to necessarily have 5 separate shadowing activities and only a handful of other more hands-on activities. So I vote for kind of grouping it as much as possible.
Yep.
Agreed.
Group it all. And then typically the question that follows is, well, who do I put for the contact person? You can put the most recent person. You can put the person who knows you the best. 99.999% chance none of those people are called. So just pick one.
Yeah.
All right. Jen asks, is interviewing for a spot on the waitlist a thing? Just something I've seen said about interview invites given out this late. Dr. Scott Wright, former director of admissions. This is something I hear all the time. Later interviews are for waitlist spots, not necessarily for available seats that are left later in the cycle.
Well, as with a lot of the things that we talk about, it depends on the school. And, but I think that that's possible, that a school, everybody the way things work, in my experience, in the medical school admissions process, is a lot of things are based on the history of that medical school. So they have an idea of how many people they need to interview in a given year based on their historical track record. They know how many people they need to interview in a year to yield the class that they want. They know how many people they want on their wait list, depending on a variety of past factors that they need on their waiting list to be able to have a deep enough waiting list to accommodate new spots that are going to open up later in the spring or early summer. So it is possible that a school would look at their waiting list or the people that they have interviewed that they still have in their pool and identify that we need to have a bigger pool. So let's interview some more people we don't have spots right now, but we anticipate that we will. So we'll put them on a waiting list. So I would say, yes, it is possible that is a thing, depending on the school. And obviously they're probably not going to tell you that up front, but I don't think you would treat it any differently, even if you knew that was the case.
Yep. Ryan, hello, Ryan, back again. I get paid as an RA at school to be on call for COVID isolation, transport, meal delivery, and pretty much provide everything they need and make sure they are okay. Ring, ding, 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 ding. Is this clinical experience? Our favorite question.
Right.
COVID isolation transport. Is that like you put a blanket around them when they walk to the common bathroom to make sure that they're isolating? I'm not sure. Doesn't sound like clinical experience.
Yeah, I would say no.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
sorry,
part of the
Ryan.
gym. Yeah. Sorry.
Definitely an interesting activity and one that you might want to put on your application, but I wouldn't categorize it as clinical.
Abdul, this might be a repeated question, but do medical schools really care if you go to an elite school or not? So I'm in a couple Facebook groups of parents of pre-meds and pre-law and whatever. And this is the ultimate question. And I'm happy to hear that a lot of the advice from the quote unquote experts of the group, the people who are admins of the group and have started it and whatever, they are pretty clear, not spreading misinformation. Go to the school where your kid will be a good fit, where they're going to thrive, where they are not going to rack up a ton of debt. And just go have fun. The institution matters very little.
Yeah, I agree.
Good question, Abdul.
Haneen asks, how can I describe having to move out of the U.S. and live back home during my undergrad years because of my grandparents' well-being? I didn't have much of a choice in the matter. Will this be a negative? So the issue I see, Scott, we talk about this a lot, is doing your undergraduate courses outside of the U.S.
Yeah,
and Canada.
that's the bigger issue here.
Yeah, the question would be like, were you doing online school through the U.S. institution, or did you do your college, your undergraduate years in this other country? That is the bigger issue.
Yeah, I agree.
Or did they have a break where they had to stop attending school during that time?
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, could be. I don't think it's going to be a negative. The only
No.
in terms of you as an applicant, I don't think that even if it was a break in your undergraduate years, that's not going to be a negative. You may want to indicate that in the application or in the secondary application, why things occurred and stuff. So explaining that, but generally speaking, now that the caveat to that is, as Ryan said, if you had to go to a foreign undergraduate institution, then that's going to be problematic.
Something lemon. Hi there. Would you consider COVID screening to be clinical experience, doing things like taking temperatures, asking questions, blah, blah, blah? Yeah. We've talked about that a lot. COVID screener, definitely clinical.
Yep.
Should we do a quick, what is the definition of clinical?
Good idea.
Bernia.
Anything where you are directly involved in, responsible for, engaged in the health and care of another human being. Is the best way I can describe it. So screening temperatures, doing the questionnaire, engaging with patients in that way absolutely would count as clinical. The setting doesn't matter, right? We talk about this all the time. It's not where you're doing it. It's are you directly involved in their care, taking vitals, things like that.
Very good.
Nara, should I apply with a 3.5 and 505 MCAT, or should I retake the MCAT and apply next year? So Manar, the 3.5, we love to say, doesn't tell us anything. Is it a 3.5 with an upward trend? Is it a 3.5 with a flatline trend? Is it a 3.5 with a downward trend? Is it a 3.5 with a roller coaster trend?
Yeah.
So this is why one of the reasons we created Mapped. Mapped is a technology, app platform where you can go create a free account and go track your GPA and go graph it. And then you can come to us and say, hey, here's my graph. And we can see it. And then we can give you much better advice through Mapped, through that 30-day free trial. You'll also have access to a Mapped advisor through Mapped. So one of us, where you can just message with us after you put in all of your grades. You can say, okay, like now look at my 3.5. What does that mean? So that will help. A 505
Although we're
MCAT,
still going to say we're not going to talk to you about it unless you tell us about your activities.
Yes, you got to put it all in.
I don't care about your stats if you don't tell me about your activities.
Right.
Put it all in. A 505 MCAT, not horrendous, not amazing. A higher MCAT score can always help too.
All right, let's keep trucking.
Jonathan asks, do multiple publications really help your application that much? Nope.
Period.
Nope.
Full stop.
Stop there. So I'll give my little spiel, and Scott, you can pile on or disagree or whatever you want to do. To me, the admissions committees know that research, great. You want to do it? Go ahead. Publications are luck, right? You joined the research at the right time. You joined the right research that happened to get data that supported something that warranted publication. There are lots of things that have to go right for you to have an abstract, have a publication, all of that fun stuff. the publication is not the end goal of doing research in terms of what you're trying to show the admissions committee. The fact of doing research shows that you're curious, you're inquisitive, you are starting to understand the scientific method and think critically about this kind of stuff. I still think that research is one of the most overrated parts of an application, according to premeds, because premeds think research is the only thing that matters for some reason. Obviously, a little hyperbolic there, but those are my thoughts on research and publications.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that I generally agree with what you're saying, Ryan. I think that I'm much more interested in the second part of his question, the statement. Research has been my favorite activity, and I ended up getting a few publications. I like what he says. Research has been my favorite activity. I have two comments about that. One is that's awesome. And if you anticipate doing research in the future, and that's a part of what you want your medical career to be about, then you're really going to talk about that. My guess is that the research you've done is going to end up being a most meaningful on one of your activities, and so you're going to be telling the story of why you like it, what you've learned out of it, the reflection part of that. The second thing I want to say about that is research more favorite to you than your clinical activities? And if it is, then I want you to reflect on that, Jonathan, and just think about what you've said. Research is my favorite activity. If bench research has been your favorite activity, then I think you need to consider what that means in terms of your future, what that means in terms of your medical career, et cetera. So just, kind of ponder all that and think about that, because if that comes up to an admissions committee, depending on how you communicate it in your application, the question may be, well, why, if you're into research that much, why not go do a Ph.D. in biochemistry or whatever, and do research? So you need to think through that, and in an interview setting, it may come up. Tell me about your research and how you see that connecting with your future in medicine, etc.
All right, let's keep trucking.
Okay.
Pinky asks, if a student graduates with an engineering degree and works for a year or two, then decides to attend med school, how much hands-on clinical experience would this prospective applicant need to be competitive to med schools? So, the clinical experience question, Verinia, we talk a lot about the importance of clinical experience and the ramifications of lack of clinical experience. Thoughts?
Yeah, I was reading this. This reads like a math problem, like a word problem, but it's the fact that you are working after completing your engineering degree for 2 years and then you decide to attend medical school, that isn't as relevant as what have you been doing during that time. I don't know what the work is that you've been doing, if it's clinical, if it's just working at a job in engineering. So there's no way to quantify it. What you need to figure out is, have I experienced enough to say that I know what it's like to work as a physician, to work in healthcare, to work with patients, to deal with human beings at their scariest, hardest time. That's really what you have to ask yourself. So in terms of how much, enough until you feel like you've learned that. That may be a year, that may be, 2 years, however long it takes. And you want to have varied experiences as well, right? You want to be able to see, different aspects of healthcare, not just, what it looks like to just get vitals taken or something like that. So it goes back to, what have you been doing during that time, that 2-year time period? If it hasn't been related to patient care, then I suggest you start looking into doing that for as long as possible. I can't really quantify beyond that.
137.5 hours.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
I'm going to say Yeah, no, we'll never quantify it.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, this
we're
is a
not gonna
common question,
quantify it.
Pinky. You're
Yeah.
not alone, so we're
Yeah.
not coming down on
No.
you. We're never gonna say how much because there is no number.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
The number is
Yeah.
enough that you have seen patient care at its worst and best, and you're gonna show up and take care of other people and love
Yep.
the job.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there's just not much point in applying until you know that.
Should there be a number? Should medical
Hmm.
schools follow the PA route, where PA schools a lot of times have this is what we require at a minimum,
Yep.
Mhm.
and it's usually 1,000 or 2,000 hours. It's a lot for the PA route.
Yeah. I think the PA route, it's usually around 1,000. So that sort of assumes 6 months of full-time
Mhm.
work or a year of half-time work. And I do think something like that would be smart, not because you hit that minimum and then there's a checkbox, because it helps set the expectation that it should be something relatively long-term.
Mhm.
You know, you go do it for a winter break for a summer, that's not enough time to grind. It's not enough time to burn out. And I mean, I think being a physician is a wonderful job, and it's also a really demanding and frequently thankless job. And obviously doing PA work, whether you're trying to be a PA or a physician, you know, being a certified nurse assistant, being a medical assistant, it's not the same as being a physician, but at least approximates that patient care. And I like the idea of making someone do it long enough that they really can get into the grind.
I wanted to add to that. I was recently chatting with a student on MapChat, and we were talking about this and how much experience he's had. And he said to me, I said this along the same veins, you know, you want to make sure that this is what you want to do, that this is showing you that patient care is what you want to do. And he said, you know, you're right. I've learned through my experience that when people are feeling sick and they're not well, they're not very nice. And it sounds funny to say it that way, but to me that was important, because you realize, no, they're not very nice when they're not feeling well and when they're, you know, in pain, and he still wants to get up and go help them. That's what it comes down to.
Mhm.
Well, and it's really tricky too, right? Because I mean, we could take this on a million tangents, but studies have shown if you're polite about your pain, they don't take you
Mhm.
seriously,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? So like my amazing yoga breathing and ability to handle pain doesn't always do me service, because they're like, she's fine. I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm taking, it's every fiber of my being to not drop an F-bomb on you right now. I'm not fine. I'm just trying to not be rude.
Yeah, well,
So yeah, people are scared
Not
and
nice.
nervous, and often it's not the patient, it's the patient's family member. You got to deal with all of that.
yeah.
Yeah, Pinky, keep going until you feel like I really know it. All right, let's keep going.
Jose, already having a bachelor's degree and taking the prereqs for med school, will this impact my application? Will what impact your application? I'm not sure.
I don't understand what he says.
I'm assuming potentially he's saying I had to take my prereqs after having my bachelor's degree. Will that impact my application? No, that's called a postbac. It's very, very common.
Yep.
Do well. Not doing well will impact your application.
Yep.
Our friend Magnolia Med, can a psych professor that taught a class that will likely be BCPM due to 50+% bio content write my science letter of recommendation? Scott,
I mean, I put Scott on camera before we even said his name. I was like,
I-
I need this one.
I worry a little bit about that. I think that it would be too easy for what that's going to require is an admissions committee member or a staffer to really look deeply into your application to see that psych professor. Yeah, I don't know. It's too easy for the admissions committee member to see, oh, they're a professor of psychology. Maybe in the letter they indicate that they taught you in a particular class, but unless they go into detail about how in the letter how the content of their class is such that it meets the prerequisite for which they're not going to do in their letter, it would be very easy for an admissions committee to overlook that letter and think this is not a science professor letter.
Yeah, they're not going to have access to AMCAS's adjudication of the class of that person as a science. So there's more issues than not potentially.
Yeah, I think it sounds like a great letter to have, but I don't think you can count on it being a science professor letter.
Yeah,
and that's a big picture learning for everyone listening, right? Because we get a lot of, will this thing in my app impact this other thing in my app? And generally, I think the answer is assume they've only seen the one piece they're looking at right then and there.
Yeah. Especially on an initial review, maybe on the deep dive when they're making decisions, you get a lot more stuff there that they could consider. But on an initial review, I think that's asking a lot.
Yep.
Just one small clarification.
Physiological psych. Yeah.
Same answer.
Yeah, I don't think that changes my answer.
Okay.
Yeah. What if? Because typically, at least from my understanding, is in AMCAS, Interfolio, TMDSS, etc. The classification of letters of recommendation, you're not classifying like this is a science letter, this is a non-science letter. It's going to be up to the reviewer of that application opening up the letter of recommendation and then kind of going off of their checklist of like, okay, do we have 2 science, 1 non-science? Can Magnolia McKenna go and say, okay, write my letter, but at the very top of the letter say like, I'm writing this as a science letter based on blah, 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 blah. Like, could they potentially force that narrative into the letter?
Yeah, gosh,
you're like, it's a lot of work to.
Yeah.
Whenever Scott sucks his teeth, the answer is no.
Well, I think, in terms of the admissions committee members or the reviewers, whoever's looking at your application, you never want to you never want to force them to connect all the dots. You connect the dots for the reviewer. You don't want them to have to connect the dots because they're not going to do that.
Yeah. This is not Pee Wee Herman. Connect the dots. La 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 la.
All right.
Good old Pee Wee.
Now we got this a week or 2 ago. Someone asked about FlexMed, which is a specific kind of early assurance program. So we kind of punted on that one. So I don't know if we want to try to tackle again.
Sure. Would you be able to provide insight on early assurance programs for sophomores and what AdComs are looking for in earlier applicants? Scott, did UT Southwestern have any early assurance programs with anyone? No. So early assurance programs, University of Florida had one. I think it was called Future Doctors, maybe, where you would apply sophomore year. And it's basically you're applying to medical school. You're applying to that medical school. And you're saying, here's my body of work so far. They're probably going to want to look at your standardized tests. It'll be interesting to see now that a lot of schools don't care about SAT, ACT, how these early assurance programs are going to judge that kind of stuff. They're going to look at test scores if you have them. They're going to look at probably undergraduate GPA, potentially. They're going to look, not undergraduate, high school GPA. And they're definitely going to look at your undergraduate GPA, how you're performing in your first, second year, third year, depending on when the early assurance programs you are applying to, when those applications are due. And they're going to look at everything else that they require, probably a personal statement, probably a letter of recommendation, all that kind of stuff. And they're just at that point looking for the best of the best to try to skim off the fat, so to speak. Although that's more of a negative thing, but they're looking for the cream of the crop, so that they're kind of stealing you before you go out into the broad AMCAS, ACOMAS, TMDSAS world where you may get lost to another school.
All right.
Abood, some schools like Mayo and Wayne State, for example, are not rolling admissions. So what is the benefit of applying early to those schools? And will an August AMCAT submission hurt in this case? So Abood, the problem is that primaries go out to every school. So if you're like, well, I'm only applying to Mayo and Wayne State and they don't have rolling admissions, then there is no benefit in applying early, potentially. I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Well, that's in terms of rolling admissions, in terms of the actually admit acceptance. Rolling still applies to interviews. And so those schools, Mayo Clinic's class is tiny.
Mhm.
And so, they only have a certain number of there's a finite number of interview slots at any school.
Yeah.
And so as they allot slots, then you're vying for a slot out of a much smaller pool. So I think in terms of acceptance, you're right, Abood, but in terms of interview, which is prior to acceptance, I think it still applies.
Yeah. So it's a pseudo rolling admissions. It's still.
Yeah. It's a part of the process.
Apply early.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
not like schools are waiting until February and going, okay, everyone's applied. Now let's start interviewing people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And interview seats are at a premium.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Especially as the applicant pool grows, that's really a key.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good point.
Brennan asks, is there any advantage going to an undergraduate school that has its own medical school? Is there an increased chance of admission? Case Western and its MD program, for example. So it's funny. We were just talking about this. No. There are very few institutions where there's preference for their undergraduate. UC Riverside is the one school that I know of just off the top of my head, because that is a very, very specific population, very specific part of Southern California with the Inland Empire, where if you're going to undergraduate school there, you're probably from the area, and that medical school is there to serve that area. So they're assuming you go to school here, you're going to stay here because this is you. So I'm sure there are a couple other schools out there, but
yeah, and
picture,
for similar reasons, like Marshall for its Central Appalachia focus, right? But go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say that I know that when UT, University of Texas at Austin, began their medical school, I guess it's been 5 or 6, 7 years ago now. There was a big concern that this not become the UT not be seen as the feeder school for the UT Med School, Dell Med School, and this fits, I think, within the context of the issue of diversity. And you don't want your entire class or even a large portion of your class to be from one particular undergraduate institution. You want a variety of voices, a variety of people coming from different backgrounds, different institutions, different majors. That's part of diversity as well. And so, short answer to your question, Brennan, is I agree with Ryan. No, I don't think it matters.
All right. Let's see.
Jay asks, is it okay to write about self-harm in my personal statement to make a case of why I would like to become a physician? So when we're dealing with self-harm, my assumption is some sort of mental health, depression stuff going on. And we get this question a lot, right? Is it okay to write about mental health stuff, or will that be a potential red flag to medical schools, to the admissions committees? Verinia, we were actually talking a little bit about kind of our philosophy on personal statements before this call, before this live stream. And in general, the personal statement is your story about why you want to be a physician, right? Yeah. And talking about mental health could potentially be a red flag. And if it's your story, you're probably going to have to talk about it and do it in a way that maybe lessens the red flaggishness of it, if that's a word. What are your thoughts here?
I completely agree. I mean, if this was your what we refer to as your seed, what sort of got you started you on this path. I think the team here agrees, you need to be authentic to yourself. If that's your story, then absolutely. And write about it in a way that won't, cause any sort of additional concern. Maybe you can talk about how you overcame certain obstacles and challenges and were able to mentally be in a better place now. But it's very important to just be authentic to who you are. And I just want to add, if you're going to share that, be comfortable with it, obviously coming up during an interview, that you'll be able to talk about it without becoming too emotional, because that becomes then more of a challenge. If you're very emotional about it during your interview, it may not go so well.
Yeah, and I would add to that I think that my feeling is that you don't want to go into too much detail. So you said here self-harm. I don't think I would go to that level of detail. I would just say, I had some challenges, some mental health challenges, and this led to me, being interested in medicine, blah, 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 whatever. But I wouldn't go too granular on it.
Yeah. Because the truth is, like, the act of self-harm wasn't the thing that is driving. It's the experience of going through whatever you're going through and being cared for potentially and overcoming potentially, that is the motivating factor.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, there's a phrase I use sometimes when we get these questions about, like, can I share my trauma? Can I share, this horrible thing that happened to me, or this mental illness that I've been, managing? And sometimes what I'll say is, it's okay to share scars, but not open wounds. It strikes me with this question that I need better phrasing, because I don't mean it literally, right? And what Verinia was saying about, you need to be past it enough that you can talk about it. And I think Ryan can probably, because he's been through medical training, can speak to this even better than I can, that it's very important that physicians are sympathizing with their patients, not empathizing with their patients. You shouldn't be so deep in it that you're feeling your shiz too, right? You need to have a little bit of professional distance so you can do your job. So that, I think, is going to be your challenge, Jay, is like, you've been through this really tough thing that's probably going to make you kinder and more open-minded and a better listener, but you need to show them in the essay that you're through it enough that you're not going to be reliving your own trauma when helping other people with theirs.
Exactly.
And let me just clarify, Jake Goodman on TikTok, on Instagram, he's creating a nice movement of being open and honest about being a physician and struggling with mental health and being on medications for mental health stuff. And there's a lot of myths out there that if you are a physician and you are seeking therapy for any sort of mental health stuff, that your license is going to be called into question. I want to put this myth to rest. My wife is crazy, and she recently just applied for like 8 different state medical licenses. And over and over and over again, the question that state medical boards ask is, do you have any physical or mental illnesses, conditions that will impair your ability to take care of patients? There's that qualifying addition to the question, not just, do you have mental health issues? Or have you struggled with mental health stuff? Are you seeking care for mental health stuff? It's that will impact your ability to take care of patients. Right. And for some people, that answer may be yes, temporarily, and then it's not. So don't be afraid to seek help if you need it.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
The only
100%.
piece that I'm going to challenge is the description you use for your wife. She's not crazy.
Maybe she just
using a slur to talk about her mental health. You were just saying that the other Dr. Gray in your family is an extremely eager and ambitious physician.
She's ambitious, crazy, same thing.
I mean, she's not here to defend herself, so someone's trying to speak up. Okay.
She's upstairs. I can go get her.
She'll agree with me, but she'll be like what Rachel said.
I think we need to normalize it, though. I mean, us in helping professions, we need to be. You just take on all this trauma. You have to be able to kind of, find an outlet for it and release it. So
Yeah.
it's okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't ever go see a therapist who wasn't in therapy.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't really want to see doctors who don't go see their own doctors when they're sick, whether
Right.
it's, body or brain,
Mhm.
brain or other parts of body. Okay, let's keep checking here. We've done a lot of clinical, but people just want us to tell them.
Would delivering oxygen to patients in their actual home be considered clinical? Interacting with them by talking and replacing their tanks. Let's replace oxygen with milk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Sorry.
Nope. Very important.
Yeah.
Patients need their oxygen.
Yes.
Apparently, it's important to breathe. I don't know. It's funny. I was just random tangent. She goes, I was scheduling something, some kind of procedure. If it was like an echo, or I think it was an echo. I was having my heart looked at just in case. And I'm scheduling it, and the scheduler's asking these questions, and she goes, do you require oxygen? I'm like, yes, I do. If you're asking if I need like supplemental oxygen, no, I don't. I'm like, you should probably reframe your question. It was very funny.
Actually, I flourish in an environment of nitrogen. All right. Well, there is plenty of nitrogen in our air.
Mostly. Isabel, do adcoms have stereotypes about nurses I should address in my personal statement? Nursing is part of my story, but I've heard I should separate myself from nursing and say, I like science. And I want more. No. Your story.
Mhm.
We love nurses, right? So this goes back to, I think there's some data that the AAMC puts out about allied health career fields in terms of undergraduate majors, and that I believe they have a lower acceptance rate to medical school compared to other majors. And that's probably where this is coming from, my assumption. No, like, it's awesome. You're a nurse. You are taking care of people, and now you want to do it in a different way, and maybe a bigger way potentially. Like, that's awesome. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I don't think it. So I always worry when somebody says, I heard.
On Student Doctor Network.
Or from some pre-med at their school, or whatever, that no. So I agree with you. I think nursing is not looked down upon or anything like that.
And definitely don't say I like science.
Yeah. I mean, you can say it if you
phrase it in a
different
different phrase it in a different way.
Yeah.
I like science as a good thesis statement for why you want to be a scientist,
Mm-hmm.
not why you want to be a physician. All right. Here's a good problem to have.
Emma, how do you choose patient interactions to include in your personal statement if you have multiple very impactful ones? Is there ever, quote, too much info or, quote, too personal of info to include, aside from the obvious? We were kind of talking about this yesterday in Application Academy. The session was about watering events, which we kind of think about in terms of the patient interactions that are confirming your desire to be physicians. And especially going back to the last question, if you're a nurse, you're going to have lots of patient interactions. Verinia, what are your thoughts on how to figure out the unfortunately, you only have 5,300 characters. How do you figure out which ones to fit in there?
Yeah, that's what I was just about to bring up. Obviously, you want to be mindful of the character limit, but it's going to require just, really digging deep, doing some reflection on, what were the events that really kind of framed in your mind, my goodness, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do this. This is the impact I can make. And it, pick, usually 2 at most, we'll tell that story in a way that's really showing why this is important to you. But the character limit kind of forces you to really be selective and force yourself to kind of stick to those 1 or 2 scenarios.
Mm-hmm. True.
Morgan asks, is it okay to apply to MD, PhD programs in the middle of a post-bac? So I had this conversation recently with a student, actually today's episode of the Premed years. And the conversation that we had was she had a less than a 2.5 undergraduate science GPA at graduation. So she finished her undergrad, 2.5 less than a science GPA. So she did a post-bac. And she applied to medical school, her first application cycle, during her post-bac without finishing the courses. And her advisor said, probably not ready. My general advice is don't do that if you're using the post-bac for grade repair. Right? Finish showing the school that you have fixed what your issue was, and you can finish strong and then apply. So, Morgan, if you're applying because you're trying to show academic ability, probably wait until you're done. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Yeah. Total agreement.
You can't assume that schools are going to look at any sort of updates or anything when it comes to GPA. So just don't play that game.
Yep.
Nina asks, I did my undergraduate outside of the USA and Canada, but I did my master's at the University of Toronto, Canada. Would having a bachelor's degree outside of the USA, Canada be a problem? Yeah, it could be.
Yep.
We've talked about this a bunch. Potentially the masters will negate that issue, but you're going to have to talk to schools and find out what they think.
That's going to be an individual school decision.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. 151. We got time for a few more.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Abood asks, for schools that take highest MCAT score, do they still look at previous scores and look down if they were low? Nope. How dare you improve?
Yeah, really. I think the high score was a fluke.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Yeah,
good job.
Fine.
That does happen sometimes in SAT land.
It does. But you just move on and go, ha! Yeah. Tricked you all. Alan asks, the way I understand it, if I spread X, SA 125-ish amount of shadowing hours over 3 specialties, is this the best way to go about it? Okay, so Scott, you are a fan of multiple specialties for shadowing, primary care, surgery kind of stuff. My take is like, it's hard enough to find shadowing. Just get one if that's great. If you can get more, great. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you have the ability to get more, do it in a different specialty. See what the differences are between the family practice doctor that you shadowed and the plastic surgeon that you're shadowing.
Christopher, any tips on changing career paths in healthcare? How to answer the question that my current job is not something to fall back on when I'm focused on becoming a physician. I'm a respiratory therapist. I'm not sure I understand the question. Vernia, do you
I think he's asking, I think he's asking if they're currently in healthcare and they want to change careers, like someone going from nursing to medicine. I think they're a respiratory therapist applying to medical school, and they don't want their current job, or how to answer the question that my current job is not something to fall back on. I mean, I think you just have to be honest about why you're changing careers. Why not continue as a respiratory therapist? What is it about that job that you feel, it's not what you want to do, or what is it about medicine that makes you feel like that is what you want to do? That's what it comes down to. At least that's how I'm understanding it.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a problem, Christopher. I mean, we get a lot.
I don't think
often,
so.
It's often nurse to physician, or sometimes PA to physician, but it's common to be in healthcare and then realize, actually, the physician role is the one I really want.
Exactly, and you don't want to. A lot of it goes to also how you're framing your current position, right? So, as a respiratory therapist, you don't want to like approach it from a negative perspective and say, well, I hate it, I don't want to do this anymore. Whatever the reasons are that are, more related to why you feel like being a doctor, you're making more of an impact that way is how I would approach it.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, we started with an acceptance, and I think we'll end with an acceptance. Alice has got a real good problem here.
How can I respectively bargain tuition prices with multiple acceptances? Who do I reach out to? My top choice is an out-of-state school that will charge me out-of-state tuition, but it's the best fit for me. So, financial aid packages, Scott. Is this something that students can proactively say, like, show me what you got, or do you just sit back and wait?
No, I think that the process is much different at the medical school level than it is at the undergraduate level. I would be careful about this, and I would just, number one, I would wait and see what the medical school offer, what they offer you, and see, kind of how it plays out. For example, they may offer you enough money. A lot of medical schools, if they offer you a scholarship at a certain level, you're automatically guaranteed to pay the in-state tuition rate. For example, I know that this is the case in Texas. So if you get a scholarship in Texas, it used to be $1,000 a semester, right? It may be a little bit more now. But if you get at least $1,000 scholarship, you're able to pay the in-state tuition rate. So I would, make sure you understand everything about the situation at the various medical schools, particularly this one, where you feel like it's really the best one for you. But I would say, just be. I don't know. In terms of who you're going to reach out to, you would reach out to the financial aid office, but they may not even be willing to talk to you until they've got a process done where they've awarded financial aid and they know better. But you don't want to leave a sour taste in their mouths with you kind of when it becomes clear that you're bargaining tuition prices. That's my feeling.
Yeah.
Sit tight, Alice.
Yeah,
Bask in the moment.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. But it's awesome that you got multiple acceptances.
Yes.
Hooray for you. That's awesome. Very cool.
Well, as we just popped up on the screen, use the code 30 days free to try Mapped app at mapped.com. As part of your 30-day free trial, you'll get access to our Mapped advising chat right inside of Mapped app, where you can enter all of your academics, your coursework, your MCAT, your activities, whatever, and then chat with one of us inside of Mapped app and ask questions and get some more potentially specific answers. And Application Academy is closing Friday, February 11th. As we're recording this, it's February 9th. If you're applying in 2022 to start medical school in 2023, applicationacademy.com. You get to hang out with me 4 hours a week. One of the three, Verinia, Scott, or Rachel, for an hour or two a week. Our TA for a while as well each week, 40 weeks to help you get into medical school. So thank you all for coming and hanging out. Thank you, Scott, Rachel, and Verinia, for being amazing co-hosts and experts to help answer questions every week.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
One of my favorite things of the week.
Me too.
Yes.
Same.
All right. See you guys next week.